This sounds like a stupid question.
Probably is, because, yeah, go ahead. Skilled managers equals high morale, which equals all that cool stuff that you cannot pay for and you can't punish for.
When you close off that feedback channel, you are not going to be able to hear the truth.
In the first microseconds, your brain can't tell the difference between physical danger and what we call social danger.
I'm pissed off at you.
Me, specifically?
Well, just because you're my boss and all.
Employees tend to get promoted until they reach their level of incompetence. Go forward and don't suck.
Hola, amigos. Espero que estás pasando un buen día. Hello, friends. I hope you are having a good day. I am working on my Spanish. I'm not sure how fluent that was. Let me know if I hit it or miss it. Anyways, hey, welcome back to another episode of the Managing with Mind and Heart podcast. My name is Ethan Nash, and today's topic is on self-compassion. And since self-compassion is about how we have conversations with ourselves, I decided to kick Mike, aka my father, out of the studio and have a little conversation just with myself this time. So, anyways, I know you'll all miss him this show, but you got me, so deal with it. I'm gonna be, like I said, talking about the concept of self-compassion and its relation to a growth mindset and how those two concepts interact. Okay, hold on. Before some of you turn me off and chalk these topics up to just some touchy-feely, non-practical fluff, just hear me out for a second, and then you can turn me off. Self-compassion sounds touchy-feely, but I've come to believe it's actually a critical skill for those invested in their roles as leaders and for those that understand the necessity of continual self-growth as a human being. So this is a topic, right? Self-compassion and a growth mindset. This is a topic that I explored in my graduate school, and I've begun to realize that self-compassion and a growth mindset are vital to the success and performance of individuals and teams. And there's a lot of really cool research that suggests this. So, and I'll define some of these terms down the road in just a bit, but I've also seen this play out in my own life and in the lives of our clients and of my friends and of my colleagues. And my anecdotal experience seemed to align with the research I explored as well and am continuing to explore. As a leader, as a manager, as a human being, I believe that you need to be continually growing as a human being. And our philosophy at Nash Consulting is that developing the capacity for personal growth is as important of a leadership skill as any other one. Seriously. I think we all know those people. I'm not throwing out names, but we all know those people who are just kind of permanently stuck, right? I'm not talking about stuck for a day or a month or even a year or two, right? We all get stuck once in a while, but I'm talking about those people who are permanently just stuck, like they just aren't growing and developing themselves. I believe, and the research I've been looking into really backs this up, and really our belief at Nash Consulting is that these people that are just permanently stuck in life will be ineffective leaders in the workplace and in life. You can't lead and manage others when you're not willing to continually develop yourself and be the most effective person you can be. Okay, rant over. Feel free to shut me off if this just seems unimportant and just boring as hell. I'm sure you have a great NPR podcast or Joe Rogan in your queue you could listen to besides me. Or, just maybe, feel free to listen on and hear what I've come to understand about the importance and power of cultivating self-compassion while embracing a growth mindset. I'm not going to spend any more time talking about why growth and development is vital to effectiveness and performance really in life, let alone well-being. For the sake of the argument, I'm going to assume we are all people who want to pursue self-growth and understand that this lifelong pursuit is needed if you expect to lead others. Leading others is about helping people grow and develop themselves. And how could you possibly do that if you aren't committed to growing yourself first? I sometimes get pushback with people saying that, once you get older, you just are who you are. In fact, I had someone in one of my workshops say that. Yeah, as you get older, you're just kind of stuck in your ways. You are who you are. And you're not able to grow like you did when you were younger. This just isn't true. It's just not. And there's plenty of science to back it up. Throughout life, we are always capable of building new neural pathways as we improve ourselves, gain new skills, develop new behaviors, and just learn new stuff. Our brains are amazing, and they don't stop growing. Scientists have observed the gray matter in the brain growing, right, in all the right places as people learn and develop new skills and behaviors and habits. And this can happen all the way late into life. Okay, enough with the subpar science lecture. I hope that made sense. Punchline to take away here is we can grow and develop, and it is vital to our success in work and in life. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to share with you a model from the social sciences and one we use in our workshops quite often. This is the 4 stages of development. So when we develop a new skill or behavior, aka work on self-growth, we go through these 4 stages of development. The first stage is the unconscious competence stage. Again, unconscious competence. This is the stage that I have no idea I have a deficit. So, for example, for the longest time, I didn't know that I often would show up as angry to those around me at work and in life, right? That emotion just kind of leaked out on everyone around me. And for the longest time, I had no idea this was a thing. I thought I was pretty even-keeled and emotionally level. I wasn't. So that's the unconscious competence stage. We don't even know we have a deficit. Now we can get on a growth path. This is when we realize we have a deficit in something. And so we go to the next stage, which is the conscious incompetence stage. Conscious incompetence can hurt. I'm warning you now, although I know you all already know this. It's like, oh wow, I'm really crappy at keeping my emotions together. It spills on everybody around me. That's bad. That's really embarrassing. I wonder how many toes I've stepped on throughout life and relationships I've harmed. Right? Anytime we have a deficit and we recognize that, it can be painful. So let's dive a little bit further into the psychology here. Your ability to practice self-compassion is what makes it possible for you to land here in this stage and successfully move along the path of growth. Because without a practice of self-compassion, and some of us do it more naturally than others, but without self-compassion, we just beat ourselves up. We say, gosh, I'm such a bad person, I'm such a jerk, and we get stuck, right? Research shows that a lack of self-compassion makes it difficult for us to embrace that deficit as a thing we can work on, right? And it's much harder for us to grow. Now, if I work on practicing self-compassion, right, which is really just being supportive to yourself, it's more likely that when I get to this second stage, I am going to be subconsciously saying to myself, oh, that's embarrassing. I really don't like that I've showed up angry, But I'm a pretty good guy, right? I never said I was perfect. I'm a human being with deficits, and I have many other wonderful qualities about me, and maybe this isn't one. So that's okay that I have this deficit. Now I can wrap my head around it, and I'm going to call this a growth opportunity. Self-compassion gives you room to get your head around the idea that you have things to work on, and that's okay. Now you can work on it and understand you're going to be really bad at it for a while, but with persistence, you'll start to improve. So with this, we can start to work on the skill or behavior and eventually move into the conscious competence stage. Conscious competence. This is the stage where we are practicing the new skill or behavior or habit, and it takes a lot of effort, takes a lot of mental strength, and it takes a lot of work, and we're going to mess up a lot, but we are consciously working on becoming more competent in our deficit area, right? That's what's going on in this conscious competence stage. And eventually, after lots of hard work, you can move into the final stage, the unconscious competence stage. This is where we eventually get good at it, right? And we improve in this deficit so much, and we don't have to think about it as much when we do it. It just comes more naturally. That's why it's unconscious competence. And in many cases, it can take a long, long time to get here. And to be realistic, we may always be in a place where we have to focus really hard and it doesn't come naturally, right? But it becomes easier to practice and results start to show. But the main point here is that when we aren't practicing self-compassion intentionally, it makes it really difficult to accept our deficit and provide ourselves the care we need to improve at it. In a lot of ways, self-compassion is a meta skill. I really do view it as the meta skill. Meaning, it's a skill that feeds into all the other skills. They're the rudimentary components to creating all the other skills. If you want to get better at receiving feedback, or in my case, showing up less angry, or get better at swimming, we should be developing the skill of self-compassion. If we spend too much time just beating ourselves up, it's much harder to focus on what needs to happen to improve in these areas. When you can say, you know what, I have a deficit and it's okay because all humans have deficits and I'm capable of improving, that's when you can get down to business. That's when you can start to view your lack of skill or deficiency more objectively and figure out a plan to improve it. So self-compassion really is a meta skill. All right, before I go any further here, I'm just going to take a pause and address a few common myths about self-compassion. One common myth that I hear is that self-compassion is a form of self-pity. No one likes a pity party. But self-compassion is actually an antidote to the tendency to whine about our bad luck. It makes us more willing to accept and acknowledge difficult feelings with kindness and helps us process and let them go more easily. Research shows that self-compassionate people are actually less likely to get bogged down by self-pitying thoughts about how bad things are. That's one of the reasons self-compassionate people have better mental health, as the research indicates. Another myth is that self-compassion means weakness. There's actually some interesting research from David Sabara, I believe that's how you pronounce his last name, S-B-A-R-R-A. He's at the University of Arizona. And his research shows that people who displayed more self-compassion during a difficult life event had better psychological adjustment and coped easier, allowing them to become more resilient. That doesn't sound like weakness to me. Lastly, there's a myth going around that self-compassion will make you complacent. And this is one that I actually struggled with for a while. The idea is that if we don't criticize ourselves for failing to live up to our standards, we'll automatically succumb to laziness or something like that. But there's a lot of research showing that self-compassion is a more effective driver for personal motivation and grit than self-punishment. Researchers found that participants who were helped to be more self-compassionate about their failures reported being more committed to improving the behaviors than those that did not practice the self-compassion. As self-compassion researcher Kristin Neff from the University of Texas in Austin wrote, "If we can acknowledge our failures and misdeeds with kindness, it's much safer to see ourselves clearly. This provides the encouragement and support needed to do our best and try again." In the show notes, I'm going to provide an article on kind of myths around self-compassion by Kristin Neff, so you can check it out yourself. But I wanted to address those before we move on any further. Okay, moving on from the myths. To continue to grow and develop as a human being, this requires going through setbacks and failures. We all know that intuitively. Most people want to grow and improve, and self-compassion is a critical skill for doing this. Kristin Neff, again, the researcher that's really devoted most of her career to researching self-compassion at the University of Texas, she's long studied self-compassion and has articulated 3 behaviors of people with high levels of self-compassion. The first behavior is, rather than being judgmental about your mistakes, you're kind to yourself about it. Second, you realize that setbacks and failures are a shared component of being a human being. And third, you balance the feeling of feeling bad about it without letting those emotions take over. Research has also indicated that developing the skill of self-compassion leads people to embrace a growth mindset. So, the term growth mindset was coined by Carol Dweck of Stanford University, which is defined as the ability to see ourselves as malleable and that we're not stuck with the traits, talents, and characteristics we have. In other words, we have the ability to constantly improve and grow. Dweck's research also reported that a growth mindset boosts positive emotions and one's ability to bounce back from failure and defeat. Bouncing back quickly from failure allows us to get back on that path of growth and development and improve ourselves. Additionally, researchers at the University of British Columbia reported that when students' level of self-compassion grew, so did their overall motivation and engagement. So when you look at those 2 pieces of research together, what it indicates to me is that self-compassion triggers a growth mindset. There is a lot of really cool research on growth mindset. Those that embrace it are more effective, reach their goals more often, and are better able to make those around them more effective, right? Like as a manager or as a leader. Again, I'll share some growth mindset resources in the show notes for you to check out. Now, let's talk about a strategy for developing self-compassion. Now that hopefully all you listeners understand the importance of self-compassion and how that leads to more growth and development and more effective growth and development, let's figure out a way to cultivate it. Let's figure out a way to develop that skill. One strategy for improving self-compassion and therefore getting into a growth mindset is learning to talk with yourself like you would a close friend. So here's an exercise for cultivating this meta skill of self-compassion. Recall a time when a colleague, family member, or friend was going through a difficult time. Maybe they had done something they weren't proud of. Maybe they were struggling in their job or relationships, or perhaps they were just embarrassed about something they did or said. How did you talk to this person when they came to you, showing this vulnerability about how they messed up? What did you say? What did you sound like? Note the words you used, your tone of voice, your body language, etc. I'll often have my coaching clients journal about this. How did you talk to this close friend? The next exercise I'll have people do is flip the script. Recall a time when you did something you were not happy with, you were embarrassed about, or you were just generally displeased with yourself. I'll have people journal about what their self-talk was like. Oftentimes, when I have people do this exercise and when I do it myself, there's a recognition that we don't often talk to ourselves as kindly, as gracefully, or compassionately as we would to a close friend. When I've done this, I recognize that I talk to myself in a way that I would never talk to a close friend. The old coinage, we are our own worst critic. So I ask people, and I ask myself, why do you think this is? Why do we not talk to ourselves like we would a close friend? And you can journal about that as well. So as you progress in this exercise, and after this kind of deep reflection, I encourage you to do the next exercise. Take a setback you are currently facing or have recently faced. Spend a few minutes writing a letter to yourself, as if you were a close friend, responding to the recognition of your failure. Kristin Neff is who I got this exercise from, and I've kind of spun off of it, and I suggest using the following prompts as you write this letter, right? And this is bringing us back to those 3 behaviors of someone with high level of self-compassion. How would you remind yourself to be kind and understanding to yourself? How would you remind yourself that setbacks and failures are an experience that all human beings have? And how would you remind yourself to keep negative feelings in perspective? And lastly, what steps can you now take to improve the situation, to learn from it, and to continue down the path of personal growth and development? When we're caught in this vicious cycle of beating ourselves up about a failure, it can be helpful to also have a small phrase to repeat to yourself that reminds yourself to practice self-compassion. This is another trick brought forth by Kristin Neff. Obviously, I love her work. So, Neff recommends developing this short phrase or word that you can say to yourself in your head when you notice you're beating yourself up, right? And it can be helpful to go back to those previous exercises and think of yourself as a close friend. For me, I found it effective to say to myself, it's okay. We all mess up. You're still a good person. Now let's figure out a plan to improve. Self-compassion, as you can obviously see here, it's a practice. It doesn't come easy for all of us, me included. I spent a lot of my life just beating myself up and not giving myself the care and support I need to get into that growth mindset. It's a practice, but it's totally worth developing. So as you practice this skill, you're probably going to notice that you fail at being self-compassionate. This is normal. Remember to give yourself self-compassion about failing to be self-compassionate. Talk about meta. With time, it will become easier and easier to give yourself self-compassion and give yourself the self-compassion you deserve. I've experienced it. I'm not perfect at it. It's still a pursuit. It's still a practice. I think I'm still in the conscious competent stage where I have to work really hard at practicing it, but I've seen results. So when you experience a failure, try to assess your performance with being self-compassionate. Did I remember my word or phrase to remind me to be self-compassionate? Did I treat myself like I would a close friend? What can I do differently next time to be more compassionate towards myself? See, this is the beauty of self-compassion. It doesn't mean complacency. I'm going to repeat that because that's important, and it's been something I've had to constantly remind myself. Being self-compassionate doesn't mean complacency. It actually means experiencing your setbacks and emotions around those setbacks more fully and accepting them more fully. It's leaning into your shortcomings, to your setbacks, to your failures, and giving yourself the support you need to use it as an opportunity for growth. With enough inner support during setbacks, we're actually able to more easily wrap our heads around the idea that we have work to do. And we can get into the growth mindset to get that work done. So, another key skill to becoming more aware of how you treat yourself in the face of setbacks is the ability to be more mindful with your feelings and emotions as they arise. We talked about mindfulness in a previous episode. I believe it was called Learning to Manage Your Mind. I'll link to that in the show notes as well. But we talked about mindfulness being another meta skill for being an effective leader or just being effective in life. Now, research by Neff found that when people practice self-compassion before starting on a meditation mindfulness practice, they're more likely to stick with it. So self-compassion allows us to give ourselves enough encouragement and support without downplaying our failures, which helps us develop more grit. So you may be familiar with the name Angela Duckworth. She wrote the book Grit. And grit is really just stick-to-itness. It's much easier to stick with it if you have self-compassion to fully wrap your head around setbacks and experience that setback fully. It allows us to view it more objectively, which allows us to make an appropriate plan to work at it. Now, I'm going to end today's monologue just by briefly touching on the subject of gender roles as it relates to self-compassion. Kristin Neff and myself, just through personal experience, has found that men tend to struggle with wrapping their heads around self-compassion, right? Because it's warm and flowery, and society puts forth a narrative that males are not supposed to be that warm and flowery person. And this is really unfortunate because men, like anybody else, need the support, the internal support, to move beyond the stage of, I'm such a bad person at doing this is so hard to wrap my head around, right? And they waste all this time beating themselves up rather than giving themselves the self-talk of, hey, it's okay, I messed up. This is what happens as a human being, and I can work at this, right? So I know there can be that gender role component with self-compassion. Kristin Neff tells this story where she worked with the University of Texas men's basketball team on self-compassion. And she didn't use the term self-compassion because she recognized it might not be received well by this room full of 6'5" men. And so she had them use the term or the phrase, making friends with yourself. And she framed it as, okay, as a basketball player, would you rather have the coach that's yelled at you and said, you suck at this, how could you do this, right? You're failing, and you're no good at this, you'll never be good at this, right? Do you want that coach or the coach that says, hey, look it, you messed up there, that's okay, we're going to move on from this, right? Give yourself a break and focus on what you need to do to improve. And again, we're all going to mess up and we're going to continue to mess up. But let's find a way to move forward on the path of growth and development. And this room of basketball stars, they got it, right? And they all would rather have that coach that doesn't downplay the failure, but provides support for helping you to analyze the failure and move on. So, in sum, practicing self-compassion is not a form of pitying yourself. It's not a form of weakness. It's a form of fully wrapping your head around the failure, experiencing that failure fully and honestly, and then building the skill to move on from the beating myself up about it stage to the let's use this as a growth opportunity. And cultivating that skill of self-compassion gets you into the growth mindset, right? And research has demonstrated this. And when we are in a growth mindset, we become more effective leaders, parents, friends, you name it. Some of you still may be thinking this is a touchy-feely subject, but give it a shot. Try it out. See what kind of results you see. I have a feeling that you won't regret it. All right, folks, thanks for listening in, and I'm looking forward to the next time I get into the studio with Mr. Mike Nash, and maybe down the road we'll have more of a dialogue about self-compassion and the growth mindset, because I know it's a topic that's really important to him in his life as well. Goodbye, adios, have a nice day. Hey, folks. Hey, one last thing before you go. I wanted to let you know about a new offering that we have available. We are now offering a group coaching service. You don't have to go at it alone when it comes to the rewards and challenges of leadership. Whether it's navigating a sticky situation or finding creative ways to motivate your employees, we found that being part of a leadership group can help you discover collaborative ideas, get support, and contribute to the success of others. By exploring group dynamics and key leadership skills in real time, group coaching can elevate your leadership to the next level. So we're going to get this going probably at the beginning of 2021. If you're interested in exploring what it would look like to be a part of a group coaching community, please reach out to us. You can contact us at contact@nashconsulting.com. Again, that's contact@nashconsulting.com. We're really excited about this one. We've been putting in a lot of hard work to make this a really valuable experience for folks. So reach out to us. All right. That's all. Thanks.